they gave him like a laughing standing ovation, and he hadn't even said a word. He'd just been like, like looking
Stood there.
like awkward and like funny. I might have another delivery turn up. I've got my Ring camera here so I can see if it turns up. I've just got to remember not to run away without unplugging myself. Otherwise, this whole desk will come flying down. So I just need to unplug this and then I can run off. Yeah, that's it for sure. And also because my phone is the doorbell, but I'm using it as the camera, I won't be able to hear when the doorbell goes. So I have to like visually watch out for it in some ways. I'll just turn this off just in case that's giving extra.
The joys.
So are you feeling the woes of post-Olympic sadness? Because
I don't. You are.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I think I'm looking forward to the football season. So I think I'm more looking forward to that.
I can't wait for the Paralympics to start because I've got 2 weeks to wait until that happens. So that'll be my like next thing that I look forward to. But yeah, now it's like, what do we do? What do we do of an evening? There's no sports on. I've been enjoying seeing all that sports, basically. So, which is sad.
Yeah, very sad. Right, just sorting out my life before we get going. I need to do the energy thing, I think. I'm low energy today, but I'm very distracted. Distractible. That's a word. I thought I'd play some lo-fi in my ears to hopefully let my nerves settle a bit more, so I can hopefully be in the moment.
That's good.
So do we know what we're talking about today?
Is it North Wales lo-fi?
Not currently, but
I need to listen to the next one.
It is very good lo-fi stuff. So do you know what topics that we have today?
No, but we'll just run into it. I keep on forgetting. I keep on forgetting what I'm going to speak about. I then like, cool, I need to write those things down, and then I don't write them down. So then I'm in the moment trying to remember. But I'm sure things will come to me as we get started. So
Yeah,
you can jump straight into it if you want, and then we'll just roll with the punches.
Cool. Right.
So, do you want to do the intro this time?
I can do. I really want to know the episode number, but okay.
High energy. It's probably 50 something, right? 54, 55.
I don't know. Let me turn the screen down. Save me being distracted. Ugh. Right. And welcome back to another episode of Don't Be a Doorstop. My name's Tom, and Dan is over wherever. I think actually we flick in between it. So by him talking, hopefully it'll flash up as the AI is, I'm pretty sure, our video editor, to my knowledge. Dan does that work recently, so I don't actually know.
It is the AI.
Yeah, so the topic wheel is bare minimum at the moment. It is as bare as bears can be. I don't really know what to do. I've been listening to a lot of... have you come across Kill Tony at all? His podcast and his setup?
It sounds familiar, but I don't know exactly.
So I came across him through... I think it was more through Facebook Shorts, and then have slowly ventured off to YouTube long form. So what it is, it's basically just he is a comedian / roast master, and then it's normally him, his business partner, and then they tend to invite 1 to 3 other comedians or celebrities, and then they basically have a couple of people that they choose to do a 1-minute set, or they have an option for you put your name in the bucket of basically whoever's there, they have a chance to do their 1 minute in front of people. So it is quite interesting because they'll start off with someone that's really good, then they'll go to the bucket, go to the bucket, go to the bucket, and then if someone dives really badly, then they'll bring out someone that's like good that they've chosen. And it's a really interesting clever format, because it's apparently like they class it as a podcast. So I think it's like becoming number one or number two podcast. I don't know if it's Spotify or Amazon, or if it's Apple stuff. I'm not entirely sure, but I find it very clever because they've got the structure of the celebs slash the comedians being good at roasting and having a laugh and bouncing off each other, but they've also got the randomizer by you could invite someone up that completely bombs badly, bombs that's funny, that's really okay to really amazing, and actually there's it adds a bit of like you don't really know what's coming up, so you have to think fast on your feet. So I've been enjoying that, but it is interesting how some people are like, yeah, I've done this for the first time, and they think this joke would land so well, and it's total silence. The minute seems like the longest minute in their lives. But yeah, I've been enjoying listening to that recently.
So funny you should say that, because last week we were like, we realized that your content is the same content that I happen to be seeing. Yeah, so the algorithm is pushing us to the same stuff. Yeah. Funnily enough, now you've explained what that is, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I have watched exactly the same videos on social, which is funny because I saw one even yesterday where some guy just stood on he was introed, he stood on the stage, and he looked very much like, the two criminals in Home Alone. The guy that got shocked that turns into a skeleton.
Was he redhead?
Well, he didn't look redhead. He just looked like he had brown hair, and he looked like that guy. And he just stood there, ready to start, and basically people were just like laughing, probably at the way he looked. And then they kind of like carried on laughing, and then they gave him like a laughing standing ovation, and he hadn't even said a word. He'd just been like, like looking like awkward and like funny. So yeah, the main guy was like, "We've never had a standing ovation like this before," kind of thing, which I thought was funny. Yeah. But I think the benefit of doing the variations is like our attention spans are quite short, right? If we don't like somebody, we'll change channel. Well, we don't do that anymore. If we like somebody, we might like skip or whatever, right? So if you have somebody that's good and then you have somebody that's bad, there's like an anticipation of anything can happen. So I think it's great. It makes it like you're willing to hear out people that are starting out and newbies just to see, right? You don't know if your palate's going to be changed. And sometimes we're creatures of habit. So you like allow yourself to have this open-ended interaction where somebody could impress you and they could become a new, like you could become a new fan of them. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because that's what I find fascinating is they've been doing it for years, but it feels like it's been blowing up more recently. Well, or at least they're pumping more Facebook ads towards clearly me and you or whatever. But I find it fascinating how you go from, you could be a nobody to then you're either a regular with them or a regular elsewhere. And it's that interesting, I guess it's very similar to The Voice or Britain's Got Talent, on the sense that they've got a panel that can work together to create content, working with an individual that could rise or fall. But I think what's extra with that is you can then see that person regularly. So if that talent is really good, is they might bring them on the following week. And I think that's where it's quite clever, because there's a more visual, you get promoted to be on here regularly, and they might have the odd sort of comedy battle. But I think one thing that I found fascinating is when I started watching them, they said, you'll do a minute content, then a noise will go off to basically tell you to hopefully finish soon. If you basically drag another, so I think it's a kitten noise to let you know, but then it's like a proper bear noise if you're going on too long, to basically sort of shock you and knock you off your thoughts to some extent. And I always thought, a minute is not that long at all, but a minute's not that long for the professionals / or the natural people. But the people that don't land any jokes, the minute feels like they've just done 30 minutes. It's so fascinating.
Yeah. Can you see me right now? Can you see me on camera?
If I look over to my screen, yeah.
All right. I'm about to walk away. I was hoping that you'd see me walk away because my delivery's turned up. I'll be back in 2 minutes. So you can carry on speaking.
So with that, back to the tennis analogy where it's rained off, so I have to come up with my own content. So with that, what I find really interesting is a minute is not that long, so you can normally hack a minute, save needing to skip through. Plus, one thing that is really interesting is because they're comedians and they like to build on top of a joke, even though the set is bad, they might still reference the set throughout, or after that minute, they then go into a sort of a Q&A with the comedian. So like the two presenters and the 1 to 3 celebs tend to ask them a lot of questions to find out what's the most interesting part of their life, what's their age, what do they work as, and different stuff like this to basically see if there's any content there. And also they add a little bit of feedback because they've been comedians most of their careers. They'll tend to add a little bit more flair of you need to be more honest with your content or whatever. But yeah. So what's your thoughts on all what I said, Dan?
Before I answer you, what do you think turned up as the delivery?
A new window.
No, it's edible.
Edible window.
Yeah.
Is edible breakfast?
Not breakfast, but my lunch and dinner. So my
Your
plenty
meals.
Yeah, my plenty meals.
No, we're not.
I wish we were sponsored by Plenty. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. So, or sponsored by anybody, to be honest. But, yeah, you were saying about what was the name of it again? Just remind me of the name. Kill Tony. Yeah, I do really quite like the way that it's creating its own content, as in you're just giving somebody an opportunity in the same way. You know how like just interview somebody that gives. That just creates content. So if we randomly chose to interview somebody, it would be producing content. It's the easiest form and makes sense. Give somebody 10 minutes. Is it a minute? Is it?
So it's a minute stand up. Then they go into a Q&A that they could quit straight away if the stand up was rubbish, or go for like 10, 20 minutes to some extent.
Yeah.
So it's very clever because they can, I guess because they're comedians and they know what's funny and what's going to land or not. If they're like, this conversation's going wild, actually, we're going to continue this and ask more about this individual. But actually, if this is just total flop, they could just cut it there. And it's clever because by having a minute and then having, a 5 to 10 minute interview, you're creating very clever short form, medium form, and then the whole thing is the long form. So you're basically creating content with that in mind. Which is interesting.
Another thing you mentioned while you were chatting was about The Voice. Have you seen that Wales are now doing their own version of The Voice?
I saw it advertised. I've not yet watched it. Is it up yet?
I've not watched it yet. I don't know if it's up yet. But you know how we've always said, like, localize ideas? You know, take an idea and if you can localize it. And I forgot that we've been saying that probably before, maybe we've been saying that before Gogglebox happened, as in the Welsh version of Gogglebox. And maybe... well, we definitely have been saying it before The Voice has happened, which I think is just funny and cool to have happen. So it's cool that take these popular TV shows, localize them. So the fact that now The Voice has been wrapped into that is an interesting one. I know that's been happening generally everywhere anyway, because I'm sure there's multilingual voices in different countries and so forth.
I think they do it all over the place. Well, people that are head of TV and producers and probably got the money. But I think that's the thing, is you don't necessarily need to go big if you're in a smaller country, because people will still watch it, even if it wasn't celebs, but it was interesting. Yeah,
yeah. And what were you referring to around the emotions side of stuff?
The emotions?
Yeah, you were like, what do you think of this? As I came back on. Just a setup line.
So what I was talking about is how I find it fascinating how it's a minute form, but then they go into a interview, and it's clever because it's like, even if they bomb, I was saying, because they're comedians, they're quite good at adding to the joke and building on top of it. So even if they bomb, they might reference it in the Q&A or later down the line in future Q&As. So it's a clever way that normally, if something's a bit rubbish, you'd want to skip it. But they've created a format that actually there might be a random in joke about all these bad jokes. So then you're not in a rush to skip it. / by the time you faff around trying to skip it, if you're listening to it in the background, the minute's over. So it's a very clever format that the certain section that is giving, I guess, the power over to an individual that could be really rubbish, actually, because they've cut it short enough, they could get away with it and it worked. Because obviously if you gave them 5 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour and a half special, well, people wouldn't watch it. People flick past it or whatever. But it's very clever going, actually, a minute, you can normally tell if someone's amazing at it or natural at it or just needs to practice more or is really bad at it.
Yeah, there's enough time for a story or a couple of jokes in there or a setup or something, isn't there? You'll get to see showcase somebody's initial talent, which I think is
that's
cool.
the thing is there's that a little bit of flexibility, even though they say try and do a minute. But if they're like wetting their pants, but then you've not quite finished your punchline, they're like, no, we'll let you finish it off. So it is that clever that it's as if you're like doing the stock market in the motion, in the sense of like, this stock is high, so we need to like buy more of it. Or not, technically it doesn't work. This stock's low, we need to buy more of it. But it's like, it's the more we need to put attention to this because this is a rising star, or actually this person is dragging their feet and sort of wasting our time, so we're going to just withdraw our attention. So it is very cool to see, to be fair.
And I think it's funny when they're not liking somebody, how they like rip into them a little bit, and sometimes they fight back and rip back a little bit, which is kind of funny sometimes too.
Yeah, it is fascinating how. I think one thing I found fascinating is there's one guy that always rips the main guy, and they have sort of a roast off, but it works really well because both of them are good at roasting. Plus, I think they've known each other for like 5 to 10 years or whatever, so they sort of have got the built up friendship. But there's this one guy that came on, and I think it was like his first time, either on stage or definitely on a Kill Tony stage, and he literally ripped into the host as his first comment. And then everyone went, ooh, when really, if anyone else would have done that joke that has sort of done those jokes in the past, it would have landed instantly. But because it was a random guy that you're like, okay, then like prove your worth, and he rips into the host. So then the host is like, wait a minute, I've given you a platform and the first thing you do is rip into me. So then he like tears him a new one by going at him. And it is that fascination of, even though you watch it and you feel like you know the whole what's going on, you actually don't know what's behind it, of who are the friendships and how they could get away with saying certain things to certain people and still laugh and find it funny. But it's fascinating how people will feel, are you deliberately ripping into me to do a joke and you're willing to take it back, and there's this sort of fun sort of arm wrestle within jokes happening, or if there's like a little bit more venom. I think it's fascinating that people can instantly pick that up to be like, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to highlight the fact that you're just ripping into me because actually you probably hate me or you're jealous of, or whatever. It just doesn't quite land the same.
Yeah, the intentionality behind the then impact of said joke. I agree. You can tell when somebody's trying a bit, there's a bit more malice involved in like a put down, when really they're essentially trying to impress the room by making it a bit more harsh. And it would fly in another dynamic. However, in this newbie dynamic, it doesn't work.
I would love to see someone that in their minute literally just roasts each and every one of them, but does it really well. I'd be fascinated to know how that lands, because a lot of the time they'll roast them really badly, so then it just doesn't land at all. But I can imagine it. I'd be fascinated, instead of doing your 1 minute of comedy, that you have a minute of at least roasting the two sort of the main host and the co-host, and then if you on the fly then roast the two individuals that you might have not known who's the sort of guest speaker or one individual, then I'd be fascinating to see that, because then it shows that you're witty off the top of your head. To some extent, I'd quite like if like Lee Mack or someone went on there, because I know how witty and sort of how quick his mind works, just to see how he would do in that sort of pressure cooker to some extent.
This is why I've always really liked Mock the Week, and how it's always kind of blended topical and also spontaneous, and you can figure it out, but they're not at each other. But it would be interesting to do something that they're at each other a little bit more. because that would be fascinating. But you'd have to have that rapport, because there are some. There was something that Jimmy Carr did with that Catherine lady that was
roasting
like
stuff
a roasting stuff, and that was quite funny. But that was more so like one-on-one rounds, then they whittle it down to like the winner of the roast off, as it were, wasn't it? So.
Yeah. I thought it was a clever concept because I know that people quite like roasting, but I felt like there's a lot of time wasted on everything else. Like the roasting wasn't the main thing because the roasting was such a small segment, and then it was getting people's opinions, getting people's thoughts, voting, waiting till the next people walk on, walk off. Actually, there's quite a lot of faff, which I'm noticing is probably more and more very sort of TV-esque. That I think now that more people are doing sort of their own podcasts or YouTube and stuff, they're trying to keep it a little bit more snappy, I guess, which I find that more
makes sense.
Fascinating.
Talking about content ideas, and obviously we've just said that having an interview style or like a stand-up style where they do a minute and you interview them, it kind of creates itself. I've been speaking about Nights and Weekends, which is essentially a 6-week program where people come up with an idea, they build a prototype, they then test it, and then they like demo it within 6 weekends. And the last week of it, or last weekend, is where they do demos. Now they've uploaded them all, so there's probably like 2,000 odd demos. And initially at the start, they have like thousands of people sign up. They then have like a subsection of those people that get the idea, and then it whittles it down, right? And then at the end, they have all the ideas. And I was thinking like one good way, you know how JJ, what's his name? KSI does like, he reviews his own Reddit, right?
Yeah.
And kind of like comments on it. I was thinking if I go through these 2,000 ideas and essentially like rate them or kind of like roast them or whatever in a YouTube stream or a video, that in itself can create content. You just take all these ideas and like what you like about them, what you don't like about them. Right, next, what you like about them, what you don't like about them. And that just naturally creates content, right? Your opinion. And there's enough variation for it to be like, cool, if you disagree with me on this idea, then you'll get inspired by this next one. And I think it is that like variation and multiple kind of ideas or contexts to keep somebody interested, because you might not like this part, but you'll like it in 10 minutes because we're going to switch anyway.
Yeah, because I've actually created some slides of going through different clients that I'm working with / want to help them out and give them more advice. And I basically created slides of reviewing their socials and website. And I nearly was like, should I post this as videos? But then I held off just because I know there's some golden nuggets, but I would quite like to do that to maybe more businesses that I don't have an affiliation to be like, oh no, this is really handy. You need to know this information rather than share it to everyone. But it would be quite cool to be like, actually, let me just churn out more stuff in that regards of when you look at a website or social to be like, these are the ways of how you'd improve it.
And if you're an expert, you can charge for it. So there is a website called so there's two sides to this roast me thing. There is a website where you submit your site, you pay, and they'll do a video of you being roasted, like critiquing the website. There's somebody else that does it on Twitter accounts, right? There's somebody else that does it on Instagram accounts where you pay to get somebody like critique your account. But then there's the funny flip side of, when people are like posting images of themselves, and then it's like roast me within Reddit, and people are like super, super harsh. Have you seen that? That's super, super funny. I think it is.
But I can imagine it happening.
I think it is /roast me or whatever. They post a photo and then people comment to like tear you a new one, as it were.
So roast and rate. Have you found the ChatGPT app on your laptop? Has that changed anything?
I've used it like once or twice. I've kind of forgotten about
roast.
It. So roast. However, I think the benefit of having it integrated, because what typically happens, I'll be not in ChatGPT and I want to Google something, but actually it's not a Google type search query. It's more of a ChatGPT type kind of like research question. So in being able to trigger it straight away, like from your like command space approach, is far better. So I think the interaction or the frictionless approach to kind of getting to it is far better. So I've not utilized that as much as I should, but that's probably going to be the most beneficial aspect of it. Funnily enough, I took I told you that I took a blood test, right? Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
So using these, I think they call them Newman or something like that. Took a blood test just to see, again, how do you know what to do if you don't know the data behind it? So get some data, measure it, and then you can figure out what to adjust. And basically, I've forgotten the point that I was going to say. Oh, that was it. I got my results. I got my results back, and somebody else on the internet, somebody else on the internet has posted their biomarkers. Because they have tests every so often and they post their biomarkers. And I basically found their biomarkers, and I was getting ChatGPT to convert because the units that they were using in my biomarkers were different to the units that he stored in his. And then I was able to compare me versus him. And then I asked ChatGPT, like, who's healthier out of the two? So I thought that was just really, really insightful. So he was like healthier in most things, but then there was some other things that I was healthier in. And I just thought it was interesting being able to do that. Of course, I could have done that manually myself, but it like was a 2-minute job rather than a 20-minute job of having to find the formulas and then you work it out. So I found it like you can be more creative in doing that stuff. Then I was like, a cool tool. You'd have to be careful with this information, but if you did anonymous accounts or maybe accounts you were happy to share it, you would then input certain biomarkers and you would basically compete to be the healthiest nomad. So in this particular instance, you could have it as like the healthiest nomad or the healthiest startup founder or something. And it's encouraging people to put in their biomarkers. It'd be a bit difficult because you've got like hardcore data on people to know that their vitamin B, like their B12 is a certain thing, or their vitamin D is a certain thing, or their cholesterol is a certain thing. So you'd have to be like careful. But he's willing to put it public in the same way that people are willing to put their finances and their revenue and their income public. So then could you have like a leaderboard of the healthiest person? However, maybe it's too specific because maybe somebody might be high in one area just like naturally, right? So then overall you have to like counteract it with some sort of like balancing of what you would deem as good and what you would deem as bad. But I thought that was quite a funny little project idea to do. And then
out
now,
of interest, do products tend to market to him of the things that he's struggling in? It's like, you're low on sugar. Here's some Mars bars.
I don't specifically think so for him because it's detached from, like, it is not necessarily a company doing it, but with me, there's a company behind it. So now that they know that I have X issues, they can provide like medicines and all sorts of like tablets or like nutrition or whatever advice on top of that, and specifically sell products. So I thought it was quite a fascinating thing. But a lot of the time when you do these startups, you realize that there's a company behind them, right? So it's a company doing this stuff, but really they're using this lab to do all these tests. So I'm like, oh, I should go straight to that lab and do the tests through that lab. And the only reason why I didn't do that is because it happened to be cheaper with these guys. So I'm like, if I go through the lab, I'll be able to get the same data, if not more. It might be more expensive, but at least I'm like cutting out the middle person, as it were. But
that is so interesting because I guess, save you paying someone to do tests on them, you're getting paid for them to know the results, but then you get to keep the data for building whatever company that you're trying to do.
Yeah, because they can then use that data to market their own products to you. Yeah. So long as it's their own products, right? So if they had like some supplements, they could sell you a particular makeup of supplement because they have now the data, and also they've got lock-in because you'll pay for the supplement and it's a subscription. So in 6 months' time, I'll do another blood test with them, and it's that rinse repeat. But I would say that this should be like, if there was, money in the system, I think this proactive approach to healthcare is far better. So if you were able to have like a yearly blood test or a monthly blood test, like baked into like the NHS approach, then maybe you would be able to address things earlier. And most things come down to like diet and exercise anyway. So it would just be a case of, cool, so these are the numbers, you kind of need to exercise more and you kind of need to change your diet. So the conclusions are, what I feel, are typically the same, unless there's a very specific like nuance to stuff. But that's what I feel is the approach, and lifestyle, right? So sleep and hydration, right? Those are the other two. So
I remember listening to a podcast recently with George Jenko talking to a elderly woman that I can't remember her name right now, and she's into loads of alternative. I say alternative. It's not really alternative. It's more removing yourself from always relying on sort of drugs if you can, and try and find food alternatives
Yeah.
rather than like more the element of what got passed down from generations to generations of if you had a cough or if you had a cold, or rather than go, I just take painkillers, or I just take this or just take that. It's like rub an onion on your foot or all these different random things. And then I was daydreaming afterwards going, I wonder if you could sort of link up her information to, let's say, farmers, that then farmers are marketing the health benefits of their food rather than going, no, that rather than supermarkets getting in the way to some extent. So then you could market to your local area of want less colds, rub a potato on your chest, or whatever the link is, to then bring more strength and power to not only you're selling food for food purposes but for health purposes, rather than big farmers just getting rich off selling drugs.
I think this is the difficulty. We're so used to having a professional or an expert tell us what we should be doing. We won't necessarily listen to the farmer to be like, hey, if you rub this onion on your foot, then it'll get rid of X, Y, Z, or whatever. You're more likely to, like, well, that person's not an expert, let's go to the expert. And then the expert, you have this disposition or this like assumption that you're going to be given something, right? Whereas doctors might be able to say, hey, like if you just, did some exercise, then this would benefit, you'd benefit in this way. And you might not go to the doctor to get advice. You might go to the doctor hoping that you'd be prescribed something and expect some sort of cream or ointment or tablets or whatever. So it's like, how do you get out of going to the doctors and expecting to take away tablets?
Yeah, because when she mentioned
there's
that,
nuance to all this stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, because when she mentioned that, I was like, actually, that's really interesting, because I guess back in the day, all your remedies as a household, as a family, would have probably been passed down generational of, oh, this is what I do if I do that. But I guess you sort of cut ties generationally, and now you've switched out for like a Google or a doctor. And it's that fascinating thing that I wonder back in the day, would you just gone, well, I'll just listen to my grandma because this is what's happened all the time and that's really worked, so I'll do that. And then the doctor and research would be secondary rather than the main aim.
Yeah, the trust factor has changed, hasn't it? So trusting other people's experiences, like the word of mouth, has changed because it's like, oh, look at this big company and they've done all this research, and you assume because there's lots of money involved, you assume that they've been very rigorous in their testing. However, yeah, there's always the alternative approaches, isn't there? So they just don't get the same light in some ways.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, get rubbing onions on your ankles. No, we need to make sure. I don't even know what it is. Is it rubbing onions on the bottoms of your foot?
Well, there was one point that was talking about onions, and there was
ChatGPT.
one point talking about feet, so I just thought I'd throw them together. It's basically, apparently, your feet has the biggest pores, so it can like absorb the most. And then I just remember them saying onion at one point during a cough because I was listening to it whilst I was ill.
Yeah, because
I just linked them both up.
There are those patches that you put under your feet while you sleep, and then you peel them off, and there's a load of toxins that have like come out into this pad because you've had it on the bottom of your foot. So I've seen those kind of videos before, but don't take health advice from us. Ask ChatGPT. If you're like, I heard about onions and feet, what's the connection? And ChatGPT will probably be able to caveat everything and tell you what you should be doing. So, but nonetheless, I think asking for the alternative is the best approach. So if you're Googling stuff, what's the alternative or what's the healthier version of this? There's an app where you scan foods and it tells you if there's toxins in it or like products, so like hair products or shower products, whatever. And you realize, oh, there's this in it. So it suggests better alternatives. You get the same results, but if there's better alternatives, why not? So if you're able to do that when you go to the doctor.
Chart on the app, or do you have to scan it to then find out all the information afterwards? Or could you do research through it?
I think you can search, but I think it's a paid thing. So to search is paid, but to scan a product is free. So if you have the product, you can scan it and you can see. So I've switched a few things away from what I was using before for a slightly better alternative and have reasonably the same results.
So what is the app called?
It's something with a carrot on the front. I can't check because my phone's
So you're searching with a carrot at the front.
Yeah. It's no, it's not. I was trying to trigger my brain to like retrieve it from long-term memory. No, I can't remember. But it is like a calorie counting type app. Yeah, I don't remember. But it's a carrot on the front. You can tell I'm a visual person rather than a words person.
I don't know if this is... I guess this sort of lines up with that health stuff as we're on the topic. I'm looking at photos because I took a print screen. I spotted an app, a simple way of tracking your calories and macros with AI, and I don't know how true it was because it's Instagram and you never fully... I've not researched it to know if it's the real deal, but from what I gather, it's literally take a photo of your meal and then AI will fill out what the protein / calorie count and all that jazz is linked to it, which I thought was so fascinating because I think that's always fallen down of, okay, you might be able to scan a barcode if you're at home, but instantly when you go out, you're like, oh, I'm stuck here. But the fact that you can literally take a photo, know the information, know where you need to go, I was like, that's pretty cool if that can work. But yeah.
For sure. I agree. Similar if you could do the same with like intolerances, right? Like if you took a photo of the meals and then you were like, hey, I wasn't feeling great after this meal. And it could be like, well, in this meal, typically there is, garlic or whatever. So maybe you don't like garlic or whatever. Yeah. I found the app. It's called Yuka, Yuka. So you scan food and personal care products to evaluate their ingredients and impact on your health.
There we go.
So yeah, that's
roasting people to roasting onions.
Yeah. And on that note, I'll speak to you later. Bye for now.